Welcome to the very first episode of Beyond the Boardroom, Her Story. So this podcast has been in the works for so long, and it hasn't necessarily been this podcast. I just knew one day I'm going to do a podcast, but it hadn't quite settled. And the reason why is I couldn't find the thing that I was just so passionate about. And so I want to talk a little bit about the title of Beyond the Boardroom, Her Story. So beyond the boardroom, we always know the successful stories of entrepreneurs, of these Utah men. It's really cool to hear their stories, right? But we don't know the entire story of who supported them. And oftentimes it's the wife. Oftentimes it's the CEO of the home, right? So that is what I am here to do, is to help you improve your life, both personally, but also inspire you from a lot of these different CEOs, wives' perspectives. So I'm super excited about that. This space is to hear stories about women who really get it. So whether it's from me personally, and I'm sharing my experience with my business coaching background, or it's sharing these inspiring stories of women who have really seen the whole story of these successful entrepreneurs. Today, I'm going to introduce two foundational concepts, and it's something that I carry every one of my students in the Live Big Collective through, whether I'm coaching them personally or any of our other specialized coaches are coaching them personally. We take them through the Live Big morning routine and the principles to live by. So that I want to leave you better than I found you with those two things in mind, as well as share my personal story about how I got to where I am today. And then at the end of this, I hope that you recognize that each episode you're going to listen to from here on out, you're going to walk away with those thought-provoking insights and practical strategies that you can use, as well as those inspiring stories. This is a community where you're going to feel challenged and supported to live a purpose-filled life, or what we like to call living big. I'm Andrea Wilde. I am the wife of a successful entrepreneur. I am the mother of two little girls that I am obsessed with, and I am the founder of the Live Big Collective. So I first want to talk about my story of how I became an entrepreneur and how that led into the Live Big Collective today. I started out when I was 14 with my very first business, and it was a kids camp. So throughout the year, I would do babysitting for people at my church or neighbors or whatever. I was the oldest of 6 kids, so they trusted me at a very young age. And I started this kids camp. And what happened with that is I made really good money, and I was excited about it. And I had themes for each day. You know, one day would be a sports day, and the next day would be Disney day. And, you know, all these things. We'd go on a walk and have our snack and teach the kids a dance, all the things. It was so fun. And I did that every summer, probably for 3 summers. And what that taught me was, I was like, I love to make money, and I love to make people feel important. And in this case, it was those kids. And I loved the idea of supplying this for myself. So what happened with that is it led to all sorts of other businesses. I went to beauty school my senior year of high school, and then went to Utah State to get my degree in business. And while I was going to school at Utah State, go Aggies, I did hair for 10 years as well as Mary Kay for 10 years. Those overlapped a little bit. I ended up earning 2 Mary Kay cars. I was the top 3% of my company, being a director for years. And I loved all of that. It was amazing. I also owned a spray tan company and sold that. I also started a window cleaning and Christmas light company, so random, right, with my brother and husband called Ease. And then I sold that as well. I've helped my husband with several businesses. What that has taught me over all of these years is that same lesson I learned from that very first business. I love to make money. That's important. But the biggest part of that is to really help women, specifically, is what I've honed in on, women become the best version of themselves. I would do this if I didn't make a single dollar. I would do this because I can see the difference that it makes when women are the focal point of their homes. They make the impact within their children and their husband, their spouse, their friendships. When they show up as the best version of themselves, it's a ripple effect into all other aspects. So this is so important to me that I want to share women's stories, and I want to leave people better than I found them. That's my number one principle to live by, which I will be talking about later today. I am such a systems person. Like, I love the layout of having kind of a checklist, right? And I read this book, The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, and it completely changed my life. And I felt like there were a few things that, I did the Lifesavers. If you guys have read it, it's an amazing book. But I did the Lifesavers, and then I chose to kind of change things up. And then when I started the Live Big Collective, I was like, I'm going to make my own acronym that aligns with everything that has worked for me. So to be honest, I've probably done a morning routine similar to this, I think 8 or 9 years consistently, and it's been amazing. But recently, this acronym, the last 3 years of doing the Live Big Collective, has really transformed my life and so many women. This morning, we just had a call with our whole Live Big family. And one of the things we got to do was celebrate one of my students, Shelly. She just hit 365 days of the Live Big morning in a row. So what's so cool is we praise women from doing it every single day for 30 days, 100 days, and 365 days in a row. And the overwhelming theme that she was talking about, because I said, Shelly, I want you to come on and I want you to share the impact that this has had on your life for this last year. And the theme that happens with her, but also with many other women that have said this over and over again, is how it makes them feel. They feel physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all in alignment before they start their day. So as I'm talking to you through the Live Big Collective morning routine, I want you to really think through how this can actually impact your life. Like, I know we listen to podcasts all the time, right? And you're like, oh, that sounds like a really good idea, but what are you actually going to do? And a theme that we take through with all of our students and all of our members is that inspiration comes from that action. So I'm going to take you through something so simple that you can do every single day. And this is something that we start with every single student because it helps you tap into your own intuition. And I think a lot of what we're trying to figure out here is your masculine mixed with your feminine, the yin and the yang. So this is the masculine of here's a whole system that you can follow, but the feminine is helping you tap into your intuition and your creativity. Okay. So as we go through this, just think, how could I be implementing this in my life right now? And I'll give you one little hot tip at the end that any busy mama can make this happen. Okay. The first one is L for literature. So this could be scripture reading. This could be books. This could be listening, audiobooks. For me, I love the pages of reading through a book and highlighting it and putting sticky notes there and actually having action items that I can take. And a formula from this that you can follow is if you read 10 pages a day, you'll read 18 200-page books a year. So if you don't read right now, just thinking, oh, I can just do 10 pages a day and I'll get to 18 books a year, that's a huge transformation. Okay, so that helps you mentally. L for literature. I is inspiration. So this can look different for everybody. For me, what it looks like is meditation, silence, being still. I'm kind of a busybody and I'm going throughout my whole life. And so to have this stillness and time with God for me is when I get those spiritual downloads so that I know what to do long-term, medium-term, and for that day. Okay. Visualization is visualizing where you're going. A lot of people use vision boards. A lot of people will think of using all your 5 senses to think of how you're going to show up one day with this clear vision of who you want to be. Sometimes you're just trying to get through the trenches of motherhood. And sometimes my visualization looks like, okay, when my 2.5-year-old is being real sassy, I make sure that I walk through my day of how I want to show up as the mother that is important to me. Okay. E is exercise. So I love the idea of exercise being replaced with movement. What brings you joy? What is exciting to you? Sometimes my movement for the day is dancing with my girls in the living room. Sometimes it's a really hard lifting workout where I'm just like going to town. And we teach in our programs to follow your hormone cycle in how you move your body. But the important part is to move it in a state of gratitude. I think there's so many options for moving your body in a state of gratitude, but we choose sometimes to just think, oh, you know what? My body can't do this, so I'm not going to do anything at all. And it's such a shift when you're like, I am grateful for the body that I have. I'm grateful that I get to move, instead of punishing it because you ate a cookie or punishing it because you don't like how it looks. Let's be in a state of gratitude on that. So L-I-V-E is live. Then B is bless others. So I don't know about you, but oftentimes when I am just feeling like really overwhelmed and not living the life how I want to, it's because I am just, within the walls of what I am thinking, and I need to get out and serve others. So bless others, all of us as the Live Big Collective family, we go out and serve someone every day. So maybe it's bringing dinner to someone, maybe it's dropping off swig to your bestie, maybe it's something really simple within the walls of your home. It might even look like treating your husband to his favorite something that he's been looking forward to. Or maybe it is spending that intentional time with your 5-year-old that really needs your attention on a different level. Or maybe it's a quick text or a thank you note that you want to send out to someone. It's so cool to think of all of these people all over the country, because of the Live Big morning, they're blessing people in their area. It's really cool. I am affirmations, or I am statements. So I want you to think for a second. Do you say affirmations to yourself every day? Just think on that just for a second. And when I ask people this, some people are like, oh yeah, I do that all the time. And most people will be like, oh, actually, I really don't. But the answer is every single person says affirmations to themselves every single day. Whether it's intentional or not is the question, right? And sometimes we have these negative thoughts go through our head where we're thinking, oh, I'm just not enough, or oh man, why'd I do that? Or that was dumb, or whatever. We want to make sure that we are not saying those things over and over to ourselves. We are replacing it with positivity. And I have a hack for you on this, because a lot of my students have come in and they're like, I don't feel, let's say it's beautiful. Like if you want to say, I am beautiful, or I am confident, or whatever it is, if you say that and you're like, oh, I'm just not quite that, this hack is perfect for you. So what you want to say instead, if you don't believe it, even the slightest bit, you can say, what would it feel like to be beautiful, or to feel beautiful? Or what would it feel like to feel confident? And that was my case. I didn't feel beautiful for a long time. And I couldn't say, I am beautiful, I am beautiful, I am beautiful, till you throw a brick in your face. It's like you have to change what that looks like. And so I started saying, what would it feel like to feel beautiful? What would it feel like to feel confident? And then all of a sudden your brain is searching around going, oh my gosh, I can actually feel what that would feel like. I'm going to visualize what I might show up in that way like. So I love that hot tip for you. G, the last one, is gratitudes. So if you think of raising your vibration, we've heard that a lot, right? Like gratitude or appreciation often raises your vibration. And I want you to think of what it looks like to spiral downward. We know what that looks like, but we don't always talk about, well, how do I get out of that? And to me, it's gratitude. So just having something that you have every single day that you can raise your vibration and start it out strong. If I'm feeling some anxious thoughts, or I'm not in a super happy place, something I can do is take it to the next level by focusing on the gratitude. So it's not just saying, I'm thankful for my house, I'm thankful for my family, I'm thankful for this. You're actually thinking through, like, what happened in the last 24 hours that just made me so freaking happy? And maybe it's like my husband winked at me yesterday in church and I was like, oh, that was so sweet, and that made me happy. I put that on my gratitudes today, right? Or my daughter is learning how to do a lot with gymnastics, kind of move her body in a different way, where before she was always scared to even jump off the couch. And I'm grateful that because we put her in gymnastics, she's feeling really confident in that way, right? So there's all these different things that you can do to focus on those little gratitudes that are really going to raise your vibration. The next thing you can take from this podcast and actually implement in your life right now are principles to live by. So what I mean by this is I have a list of 16 principles to live by. You don't have to have that many. You could have 27 if you want, or 3, or whatever works for you. But 16 has been over the last few years kind of where I've hovered around. And what this looks like is it is a roadmap for what you decide of what you actually want in your life. So I think oftentimes we're like, oh, we want this type of life, or we want it to look this way, or whatever, but we don't know how to get there. And oftentimes it's just getting clear on where it is that you're headed, but then you have something to filter all of your decision making through. So I'll probably say this a million times in the podcast. I want to leave people better than I found them. Again, that's my first principle to live by. So what that looks like for me is when I show up in different aspects of my life, it governs my decision making. So a small example of this is when I'm at the grocery store and someone's checking out, all of my vegetables or whatever, then instead, if I'm feeling kind of tired or beat down or whatever it might be, I think back to, I leave people better than I found them. So in that case, I'm going to be like, hey, how's your day going? And it's so crazy to see them go through the checkout line and all of a sudden they're like, oh, you actually care about me. I'm like, hey, do you enjoy this job? First it might start out as small talk, but oftentimes people will be kind of tell you their life story in 2 minutes, right? And I love that because again, it's the ripple effect. When you are changing someone's perspective and they know that you care about them, that's huge. Then there's been other things where I remember when I owned our window cleaning and Christmas light company, we had an employee that wasn't ideal and we had to let him go. And it was really hard. But that same principle kept going through my head, leave people better than you found them. So in that case, instead of just saying, hey buddy, we got to let you go. This is kind of a bummer, whatever, good luck. I chose to be kind instead of nice. And I was like, here are the things that I would work on to help you become a better employee. And whether he took that or not, I knew that I was doing my best to leave him better than I found him in that moment. Okay. So when you're thinking of your principles to live by, you want to think of, we focus on the 4 pillars of wealth. So health wealth, relationship wealth, time wealth, and financial wealth. So there's different aspects of your life that can give you some main categories to be going through. What are things that are important to me? So in your health wealth, I'll give you an example for that. Do you want to rise early? And do you want to be a person that gets up and makes things happen and prioritizes sleep? If that's something important to you, put that in your principles to live by. If for relationship wealth, you want to make sure that your people are more important than your phone, maybe you put something in there where you're like, okay, my principles to live by within relationship wealth would look like I always choose people over technology or conveniences. That might be an example. Then time wealth. I think time wealth is something that is so underrated and we need to be very intentional with how we choose our time. So time wealth might be, I make priorities in my life consistently that line up with my relationships. So for me, that one looks like Shane and I do date night every week. It's usually on Thursdays, but sometimes we move it around, but that is a rock solid thing in our relationship. But I make that part of my time wealth pillar so that I know that I'm making my biggest priorities fill into that time wealth pillar. Okay. The last one is financial wealth. So maybe you want to do something about giving. Is giving important to you? So maybe your principle to live by would be, I am a generous giver, or I choose to give generously even when it's not convenient. So these are some of those examples that you could show up differently because you have these principles to live by. And then each of your big decisions and each of your small decisions can filter through these principles to live by. I'm just going to give you one quick example of a story of one of our students, Bree. I asked her if I could talk about this on here. We were working together. And we wrote out all of her principles to live by. And then months down the road, still coaching her, right? And we were thinking through all of these different things of changes that were happening in her life. and she was working a 9-to-5 job. She was super successful in that, but she was realizing that she wasn't able to put her kids as a priority and that her principles to live by weren't lining up with what her life was looking like. And I remember when I'm coaching, I try to be like, okay, Bree, let's go back to your principles to live by instead of, oh, I think you should do this or this or this. I want to ask those quality questions that are actually going to lead you to follow your own intuition. She sat there for a minute and she was like, Andrea, I think I'm supposed to quit my job. I think I'm supposed to open my own practice. And she's a physical therapist, pelvic floor physical therapist in Logan, and she is amazing at it. And it has been so cool to see over the last couple of years that she changed the trajectory of her life because she realized, hey, what I actually want and what I'm doing are not lining up. And so that's a huge example of how that can really benefit you in your decision making. What do you want your life to look like? And then put your principles to live by down. So then the decision making becomes black and white instead of, oh, I'm not sure what to do, and I'm just going to have inaction in that moment. I think the first episode of a podcast is so important because I think so many times, I do this when I listen to a podcast, I find one that I like and then I go back to the very first one because I'm like, hey, I want to see like what their vibe is, like what I'm going to find in this podcast. And so I've thought a lot about like what it was that I wanted to do specifically on this first podcast. And that's why the Live Big Morning and principles to live by, it's the very first thing I teach each of my students, but it's the very first thing that I want you to implement because I know that it will be life-changing for you. So my challenge for you is to just try it the next 7 days, okay? And I have this hot tip for you that I was promising earlier that you can just start with a 7-minute Live Big Morning. So 1 minute for literature, just read, some positive quotes, right? 1 minute for inspiration, just sit there for 1 minute. Maybe you have your Apple Watch and you just breathe in and out silently, quietly for 1 minute. Say a prayer, whatever you want to do. V, visualization, 1 minute. Just think through how you'd like your day to show up, right? Just set a timer for 1 minute. E, exercise. Run up and down the stairs, do some stretching, have a dance party with your kids, like I was saying, whatever it is. B, bless others. I promise that if you just send a quick text to people right now, it can change their whole day. It's happened time and time again. So I challenge you to do that right away. I, for I am affirmations, just choose one affirmation that you can say over and over and over again. I am whole, complete, lacking in nothing. I am whole, complete, lacking in nothing. How many times can you say that in 1 minute? And then G is gratitudes, just writing in your phone 3 gratitudes. It'll take you 1 minute. So I challenge you to do this 7-minute Live Big Morning for 7 days. And I want you to DM me on Instagram. And I promise you that in that short amount of time, you're going to see those big differences. And I'm super excited to hear from you. So excited to have you join us. And please just know that because you're a part of this podcast and listening to this, you're now a part of the Live Big family. And we can't wait to get to know you better.